Hello, this is DK GolfNut. I'm out here at Miramar again, and I keep looking for Tom Cruise to jet on by on his motorcycle or something. Um, anyway, it's a cool base here. I'm going to go over today. So we've covered menu, checklists, ground and fuel, CG and load status, and now we're going to go over orders. There's a lot to do here, so I think I'm going to break this up into a couple different sessions. One is going to be talking about the functions that are available and then setting up initially for our flight. And then we're going to get into during the flight how some of these other areas function. So this may be 2 or 3 different videos to kind of get through this. But today we'll concentrate on, the flight engineer checklists that are going on. I'm going to show you the difference. This is the clipboard from version 2.4, which is a future release. I'm going to show you the difference between this and 2.3, what you're looking at. The functions are still the same. Just gives you the ability to reset some checklists, which can be very useful depending on what type of flying that you're doing. So we're going to go over the checklist, the power management functions, kind of what they do and how they operate, and then kind of a preview of what the checklists over here look like. And then when we do the flight in the next version, these things will be happening because I'm going to use the AI flight engineer, pilot, and co-pilot in order to manage the flight. And we'll turn them off and on during the flight. And I'll show you different capabilities that are here, as well as some functions that happen on the flight engineer notebook and some key charts that we can use during cruise phase um, to help us manage the airplane better and kind of, I guess, set expectations. But anyway, so let's go ahead and start here. So the flight engineer is usually not selected. If you select him, you notice how it darkens the before starting, and then the rest of them are kind of grayed out. What that means is this is the checklist that is available to use. So all of these other checklists are there, but since you haven't completed your before starting checklist, the end boarding will not be an option. So that's how essentially these work on the checklist here, as well as the, after takeoff. You notice it's not highlighted until we've actually got off the ground. Then after takeoff checklist will be highlighted, or excuse me, darkened, I guess. And then you can select it and it will execute through there if you're not using the um, the AI pilot and co-pilot. If all of these are selected and you're managing your flight with them, they will do all of this for you. So it's pretty slick to see it happen, and I would encourage you, if you're new to this and you want to get some help in flying it, using all 3 of these will greatly it will make it much easier for you as you go along. So the checklists that are here, obviously, well, actually, let me pull up what the previous version looks like. So if you notice, this is the 2.3. All of the functions are and pages and all that kind of stuff are the same. But you notice right here, it's blank. And on this, which is the new 2.4 version, it gives you the ability to reset it. And we'll look at that as we go along, and we'll talk about some, functions that would be helpful for. And I'll actually show you after we land, if we want to do a quick turnaround and taxi over, on to the taxiways and then get back in line to take off. we can actually reset after landing, before descent, after takeoff checklists. We can reset the takeoff clearance and we can reset the before takeoff checklist. So after we've landed, then we want to reset that airplane into a configuration to take off again. That's when you would use these, and we'll show that as we go along. Um, these are all executed one after another, and as the call outs will happen, you'll be able to look around the cockpit and you can see switches getting flipped and things getting turned on, all that kind of stuff. And you guys have probably all experienced this. The next area is the power management. And no management means that you've turned off the flight engineer from being able to manage your throttles. And it may be useful in certain situations if you're getting conflicts or something like that where you want to actually disable that. And you can do that by disabling the flight engineer if it's in one of these. And say it's in cruise power and you don't want to be in cruise power anymore. You want to do something different. If the flight engineer's on and it's in cruise power because you're having them manage your cruise, that could cause conflict. So turning these guys on and off sometimes doesn't take it out of that power configuration. And if you're manually, trying to move your throttles, what you'll notice is the FE, if he's managing power, will move it right back to the same power setting that he wants it to be in. So if you start seeing conflicts like that, you want to click the no manage. That will take it out of that, and you should be able to manage your throttle, power settings, your manifold pressure, BMEP, all that kind of stuff by yourself. But if you are flying with him, you'll notice that during takeoff, they'll set max power, then it'll set METO power, climb power, cruise power. A couple of things that are on there. Max power sets manifold pressure to 59 inches and 2,900 RPM on the propeller. METO power is max except takeoff. That sets 50 inches of manifold, 2,600 RPM. And you can use that for an extended climb if you need to on hot days where climb power is not enough to overcome the thin air. If you're doing this manually, you can actually keep it in METO power and actually fly extended climbs that way or faster climbs. Uh, the next setting is climb power, and typically that's around 40 inches of manifold pressure. Depends on the altitude, but it'll be 40 inches of manifold and it goes to 2,500 RPM. So you could see that there's RPM changes and manifold pressure changes the entire time this is going through that. Cruise power gets set by, and I'm going to switch over here real quick. Oops, go down. There's this little hidden notebook, and as you can see, there's charts here. And what the notebook gives you the ability to do is set up special configurations. And there's a couple of things. I'm going to scroll in here so we can see this clearer. Okay, so on the first area, the display all charts is already selected, so you can see these ones in the background. If I unselect that, they all get put inside the notebook, and if you closed it, they would be neatly hidden back here, but they are really nice to have out. They look nice, but there's some enhancements to that. If you click on this dynamic charts area, and then I'm going to hide this real quick, you could see how the areas got highlighted that will be based on weight. So this is 90,000, anything over 100,000 This is over 110,000, 120, 130, 140. So you can see how it highlights areas that are on here. And a typical cruise altitude is 5,000 feet. That's why this is highlighted, excuse me. Um, but it gives you power settings. So if we, and I wish I could zoom in more. Well, hang on a second. Let me scoot over here. I'm going to do that. So hopefully that helps. So you can see that if you do this manually, you're going to be setting your BMEP to 160, your RPM of your propeller is down to 1675. Your mixture, you're leaning that until you get a fuel flow of 475, and that should give you a true airspeed of 195, which is very accurate to the way that these flew. When you're doing it manually, you can dial it in exactly to this, and it will extend your flight times dramatically by burning fuel at these levels and these power settings. And as you go up in altitude, so this is 5,000. If you go to 10,000, you could see that the engine configuration is much different, 1900 RPM, and the BMEP is actually less because you're loading the engines more because of the propeller, and your true airspeed goes up and your fuel flow goes up a little bit as well. So these are very useful for you as you progress in the, oops, I'm gonna go back there one more time, progress in this from manually flying it to, excuse me, from using the automation that's there into manually flying. This is very helpful for you. One thing of note, that if you're flying in easy mode or normal mode, then these highlights will happen. If you're in realistic, it will not highlight the chart. So you're basically just looking it up exactly the same. It's just not highlighted for your ease of use there. Um, you can, in the future, you'll be able to, repair the fuselage. You can, repair lights, and I think it'll end up repairing, fuses if fuses are tripped, things like that. This next page, so down here at the bottom, if you click on consume, it gives you your hydraulic fluid, your oil fluid by tank, battery, alcohol. This is for, anti-icing for propeller, things like that that are used. Oxygen. Um, this is your fire extinguisher, bottle 1 and 2. The next page is your fuel configurations. This is very useful when you are flying extended flights. You can notice that this highlights with our fuel load. It tells us that we should be in configuration 1 initially. And then once we transition to the next stage at this level, we're going to transition all the way down here to the bottom, and we're going to land under configuration number 2, essentially, which is this one. And you can see right here, there's these number 1, 2, 3, back to number 1, 4, 5, and 6. So when we land, even though this says configuration number 2, we would actually be selecting fuel configuration number 6. So we've kind of put those in there to make it a little bit easier for you to select the correct one here. And that essentially engages the flight engineer. He moves all of the tank selector switches and things into the right configuration for you based off of what selection that you're making here. So in this example, if you got down to this level and it had this row highlighted, you would actually select configuration number 2, which means you would just click right on that blue area and it would put you in that configuration. If you switch over here you could see that when we were ending our flight, we were going to be ending in configuration number 6, which is tank 2A, 1, 4, and 3A would be enabled. And so you can see exactly how the valves need to be set, transfer switches, all that kind of stuff needs to be done. So it's a very useful book that will be valuable to you as you go along. So let's go ahead and switch back over here to the setup. So on this, I think we would just go ahead and enable all of these to go all the way up through taxiing. And that will get us to the point where we're ready to move the aircraft. So I think I'm going to turn this off, and then I'll switch back once those have run.
Checked.
So we're finishing up the during warm-up checklist. I want to show you one thing. If you select here, you can actually see the green check marks being set whenever it's doing the item on the checklist.
Checklist warm-up complete.
So this is kind of a cool area to go look at. Most people kind of miss it, but it keeps tabs on what's being turned on, what's being turned off. So it's a pretty nice reference for you to be able to go out there. So you can see that when we turn this on, that during warm-up was actually blinking. That means it's active. And obviously when it turns to a dark text, that means it's the next one that's ready to go. So at this point, we're ready to taxi. So we're going to click the taxi checklist.
Checklist taxiing. Taxi lights.
On and extended.
You can see it going through this
Clock
right here.
and altimeters. Set.
And set.
Brake selector lever.
Set.
All turn indicators.
Checked.
Checked. Proper reversing. Checklist taxiing completed.
Okay, so at this point we're all ready to taxi. We're going to move out here to the end of the runway, and there we go. Kept hitting the brake for some reason. Oops. I've not flown out of here before, so sorry for the shortcut across the revetment there. And even though I have a GPS course in there, not going to be using that today, so we'll go ahead and just leave it in that screen. Just going to, at this point, this is where we would do our configuration for takeoff. So we're going to go through our before takeoff checklist, our clearance, and then essentially we're going to have
Max power.
them manage that, but we don't want to select that now because it'll actually take off. Click back there. Sorry. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to do this on the next one because this video is already getting fairly long. It's almost 20 minutes. We'll handle the takeoff, the configuration that we do here, manage the altitude, all of that. We'll watch it go through its takeoff process and an automatic takeoff, and we'll we'll jump to that for the next video. So I'm going to go ahead and call this done for now. Hopefully that helped go over some of the functions. Spend a little bit more time on the FE notebook, which is kind of a hidden jewel that a lot of people don't experience, but it's a very valuable tool if you use it correctly. So hopefully that helped you, and we'll spin the next video up here shortly and get you guys some more information. So if you enjoyed it, please give us a thumbs up. If you got questions about it, things that I didn't cover, or things that you would like to cover, please make some comments and I'll address those as in future videos. Thank you.